All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today and taking the time out of what I'm sure is a very busy day to spend the next hour with us. So thank you. And for those of you joining us right now, I would also like to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and it will be available later on Enliten's YouTube channel. And for those of you joining us for the first time, thank you and welcome. I would also like to give you a brief background on Enliten. Our Enliten team truly believes that the new emerging future of energy revolves around sustainability, and as much as infrastructure and innovation is required, it's truly the human elements of sustainability that can help us create a planet that's good for people and also good for the environment. And it's from this belief that we ended up creating Enlighten Education, because real change starts with knowledge and education. And then this can later on help foster a lasting, proactive change as we work towards a cleaner, brighter, and more sustainable future. And as you all know, now that it's 8 months into the pandemic, we can really see how much education has been impacted. And that's why today's topic of how do we take care of teachers is so important to us, because if our teachers are challenged and being the leaders challenging being the leaders they want to be and in teaching, then this has a direct effect on students and their futures as well. So without further ado, today we'll go through what the teachers are really going through right now, working during this pandemic, what their emotional well-being looks like, and the possible ways that we can support them. And today we're very fortunate that we have two teachers with us, and they're the ones that will be able to give us a better picture of what they're facing day to day. And before I go on and introduce our amazing panel today, on behalf of all of us, I would just want to say thank you to our teachers and educators for your dedication. I really can't imagine what it's been like day in and day out, not only to teach your lesson, but to make it fun and interesting and a good learning environment. So I just want to say thank you. And first up, we have Lisa Pinnock, which in addition to being an educator, Lisa is a musician, entrepreneur, and recently a best-selling author. She's been teaching within the Toronto Catholic District School Board for over 25 years in a variety of roles, and she also specializes in music. She's currently working as a music instructor in the Scarborough area in 4 different schools. And Lisa brings not only her own personal values to the situation, but also her own learnings on the importance of using music to elevate our mood, reduce stress, and improve our cognitive abilities. And Jennifer Rose. Jennifer is an aspiring teacher with over 25 years of experience. She's taught in both the public school system and private school system in Montreal, Quebec, and Toronto, Ontario. And as the director of student services at a private school in Montreal, Jennifer is going to bring in her dual role and the perspective both from a teacher and an administrator. And we also have Lee Gear. Lee has been the dynamic and inspiring principal of High Park Gardens Montessori School for the last 10 years. She's in a unique position that allows her to see the firsthand how the challenges that teachers and administrators are facing directly and how it impacts the students. She's the mom of 2 boys, both of whom are the elementary program at High Park Gardens. So she's kind of able to bring in the perspective of both the educator and also the parent to see what the impact has been so far. And our following next 3 panelists all bring in their own unique perspectives on the emotional well-being aspect. So first up, we have Tamara Henningham. Tamara Henningham is a life coach, head therapist, and she's also the CEO and founder of Henningham and Associates. Tamara, she specializes in family therapy and healthy relationships and has over a decade of experience in the field. She works to destigmatize therapy by making it accessible and affordable. She believes that seeking therapy should be just as normal as a visit to the doctor. So Tamara leads a wellness group. It's called Musing of Minds. Musing of Minds, it focuses on self-development and empowerment. And through thoughtful discussion and collective support, Tamara encourages others to utilize effective mental health techniques to improve their lives. And then next we have Nancy Christie. Nancy is a mindfulness-based psychotherapist in private practice for the last 25 years. Nancy has included mindfulness methods in her individual group work and continues to study somatics, which is the human experience of the body. Nancy also loves helping people, lead into a deep sense of peace, safety, and comfort with their own skin, and when this may not have seemed possible for them for many years. She's also a certified sensory motor psychotherapist, advanced practitioner, and has the honors bachelor degree in fine arts and dance. And she also includes dance therapy in her work. And last but not least, we have Bonnie Duarte, who is our social emotional learning specialist at Enliten. She recently joined us. Bonnie is also a professional certified life coach and a registered social service worker and has been coaching for over 20 years. She's dedicated her entire career into helping people heal, grow, and thrive. And Bonnie is truly about creating resiliency within people. So let's dive into this topic. First with our educators. So I'm going to start off asking you, I'm just curious to know what are some of the most creative, out of the box thinking things that you've seen so far this year, because it's been such an unusual learning environment, being stuck at home and working hybrid learning. So what has it been like? I'll give it to Lisa and Jennifer.
There we go, just managed to unmute. Okay. Yes, that's a great question to start off with. And the way I approach my role as a music teacher has shifted significantly simply because of the restrictions that are in place for our own safety. Because, you know, I never thought in my career as either elementary teacher or a music teacher that I'd be faced with delivering my program without singing, right? So that's like number one shock value of what I've been dealing with. But in terms of just kind of thinking out of the box, as you mentioned it, I think the first step for me was just really getting the buy-in from the students. You know, I've spent so much of my career encouraging singing, and then now I really needed to explain to them at a level that they would understand why we had to do things this way. And I still do have to, you know, especially with my kinders, you know, they just want to sing. So as far as, you know, the steps in terms of delivering the curriculum in a way that's going to be engaging, you know, I've just had to really think of what other modalities can we access. Listening skills are for sure something that's been heightened. Analysis when it's appropriate, and, you know, for the older kids for sure. Movement, accessing the imagination, you know, using music as a doorway, a way to enter into a place where they can, you know, use. I don't think of it like I'm doing yoga, but I really am in some ways during our lessons, getting them to relax and just listen to the music and let that guide them in whatever way they see fit. And using materials that are available. So I did a lesson the other day with my grade ones where I wanted them to actually tap along with the rhythms of a song, and I can't hand out instruments. Again, another restriction that makes total sense for where we are right now. So I just had them use what was in their desks. I mean, it was kind of primitive and just had to be what it was, and whatever sounds came was fine. But, you know, 2 pencils, 2 crayons, whatever was what we had to do. So it's just really getting into that kind of basic mode of what do I have available and how can we make this work in a way that's still engaging and fun. So I hope that answered the question.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Working with what they already have and kind of going back to the basics and really pulling through, and how can you mimic what you already did before and bring that forward. So thank you, I really appreciate that. And what about Jennifer? How has it been for you so far?
So I think that I'll speak first as a teacher. When we pivoted to going completely online last March, that required a lot of thinking out of the box, a lot of just kind of rolling with it. And, you know, where I was teaching last year, we had about one day to prepare, going completely, you know, changing modalities completely. And so it kind of became a skill that we all honed in addition to the like learning technology and all that. It was kind of how to roll with it, how to deliver these lessons and meet the remaining objectives of the year completely online with kids sometimes as young as 6. So it was a day by day steep learning curve, required lots of, okay, well, we did learn lots about different apps and different ways that the kids can show learning. So that was actually a positive, how quickly everyone kind of learned the tech side. As an administrator this year, I'm looking at it differently now. And, in terms of groupings, we can't have kids from different classes in the same room at the same time. So that's posed a lot of problems that have required thinking outside the box. How can we get them to be in the same room? If we need to pull, let's say for student council or for extra help groups, we need lots more physical space now and lots more manpower. So lots of challenges.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was going to be my next question too. And you touched on it as well. As much as you have to kind of go out of the box to come up with new ideas, it's still very a restricted condition. You don't have a lot to work with. And the space, like you mentioned, there's very few people. So this goes for both of you, Lisa and Jen as well. Like what have been the challenges on coming up with new ideas and doing events, for example? We've heard from previous schools where doing concerts or holding Halloween, anything that has to do with holidays, they're not able to have those. So how hard has it been, or how easy has it been to come up with new ideas and new ways to integrate all of this? One of you can go up.
Okay, so maybe I'll just speak. Some of the events are canceled. Some of them are, we did parent-teacher interviews, for example, all virtual. And this year, we're doing our open house completely virtual, in line with the other schools. It is a private school that I'm at, so we do hold an open house every year. And, we went out and, hired a company to put together an open house video. So everything is different this year than I've ever seen it the past 25 years.
For sure. And what about you, Lisa? How has it been?
Yes, it's, I found that at first the idea of coming up with these new ways of doing things, these new ideas, trying to, be creative in how we're managing the space and things like events. I mean, we're not holding, I'm at a Catholic school, at 4 Catholic schools. We're not holding our, monthly masses, for example, where students would be congregating. Those things have just been put on hold altogether. So, there's no more choir, for example, and that was a big part of my enjoyment of my job. But I found that in reflecting on that question, I was thinking that, it was really actually, I wouldn't say easy at first, but it was rewarding at first to kind of like get those creative juices flowing and really try and think of ways to meet the situation where we're at. But then I think there's a point now, and maybe in the last few weeks, where there's a sense of fatigue setting in terms of just being in this striving mode all the time. And I could probably speak for a lot of educators in this way. It's like, it's one experience to kind of, shift and come up with creative plans and strategies from time to time. And then it's another idea altogether. It's another realm to just be in that mode constantly. And it can be really exhausting. So we haven't at my particular schools come up with plans for doing, for example, a Christmas concert. I don't even think actually that's been broached, because I think there is such a high level of weariness of how, let's just get through to December, so so that's kind of where we're at. And similar to what Jen mentioned, doing our parent-teacher interviews, that was another whole learning curve. So just coming out of that last week in my it's like, you almost have to take things one day, 1 week at a time, and just hope for the best and keep those those lines of communication open between teachers and administrators. But I'm glad to say there hasn't been any pressure to like kind of do things that would create more stress.
Right.
So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, like you're both saying, like it's more of a survival mode now, and everyone is trying to get through the day and get the bare minimum, even if that. And like you said, events like Christmas concerts or whatever, any other things like mass, those are the times that usually people breathe. In the normal time, those are the times people enjoy. So not having that, what has it been? Have you noticed the level of stress increase, or have you seen how the pandemic has kind of affected you as a teacher? How has that been? What have you noticed differently?
Well, I know for sure being at 4 schools has been a bit of a unique situation for me, just being able to see different perspectives based on where I am. And definitely, that there's a high level of stress overall. And I would say that there's kind of this sense of like looming uncertainty, like just, we've done at 2 of my 4 schools a recent reorganization of classes. So all those cohorts that we had from September that were in place just blew up, right? And now we've got classes that weren't split being put together. And so that creates a whole other level of uncertainty and like, so are we gonna have to do this again in January? I mean, we're all thinking that in our heads. And that just kind of makes you feel like the grounding beneath your feet is shifting all the time. So yes, definitely that creates a situation of stress at all my various schools. I've noticed that, and it comes out in various ways. But I think from the teacher standpoint, lack of social interaction is another thing that is difficult because you're kind of in your own, silos, if you will. So
for sure. And now being in the lockdown again, back being in the red zone, especially for Toronto area, it's especially harder now. You can't really go back and enjoy time with your friends and family, even with that little freedom we had in the past few months. Can't really have that, so it must be extremely hard. And Jen, I don't know where you're located now, but has the new lockdown, like, does that make you worried more for the new semester, staying in the same situation we've been in?
So I'm in Montreal right now.
Okay.
And the situation is a little bit different in Quebec in that 2 main differences, I think. One, you can't opt to have distance learning unless you have a note from a doctor. So that's not an option here. Your child has to come to school otherwise. And the other difference here is that the kids are only required to wear masks. Don't quote me, but I think up to grade 6, just when they're in common areas. So when they're sitting in the classroom, they actually can take them off. That has been a huge source of stress for the teachers. The school I'm at has big plexiglass barriers on all of the desks now. And while most kids do choose to wear the masks, the teachers are under a heightened state of anxiety and fear. Every time, we heard that maybe there was a case of a parent of someone connected to the school, it was like, kaboom, every time. The teachers would just get very, very, very upset. And so they're trying to do this job, which in regular times is a challenging job, requires a lot of, resources and energy. And they're just kind of depleted this year. So I agree with Lisa. We're just trying to get through to December at this point. And, who knows what'll happen in January? We don't know. Will we be back? Will we not? Lots of uncertainty.
It's tough. And, different cities have their own rules and regulations, regarding the cases increasing, and some schools are doing hybrid, others are doing the opposite. Would you prefer having the hybrid learning or the at-home work from home instead of going to classes? or would you feel like that would, alleviate some of the stress that you've been feeling, or a lot of teachers have been feeling, especially in Montreal, if everyone is required to go into class?
I'm sorry, just to clarify, do you mean do I prefer as a teacher teaching online or
Yeah, would you feel
hybrid?
like that would kind of alleviate a lot of the stress that
I
teachers
think
are feeling? Would it make it easier?
I think it would. But it was exhausting in a different kind of way
Hmm.
teaching online. It's hard to explain, but it takes out of you a lot to sit in front of a screen. And I would help groups of 5 or 6 kids in these little squares on the screen and try to manage that, and then be with them for half an hour, and then click onto another meeting and help another 5 kids. And then I think, me personally, I would prefer, with good protocols, to go in person. But I think it's really a personal preference that would probably just change from depending on who you asked.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because working from home is, even though you're safer, you still have to balance everything and the distractions
Right.
from home. So it's another challenge on its own. Yeah,
Right.
mm, that's hard. Yeah, for sure. And thank you so much for sharing this, because a lot of teachers have been saying this, but no one has, from what we've been hearing, like no one has really had a chance to sit and say, this has been a challenge, and for someone to hear them out. And all of these regulations have been changing kind of on their own, and no one's been getting enough notice to kind of align with it. So and that's why we wanted to have you guys over today in our webinars, to kind of hear out what's been the issue, what's the main source of stress, so that if there's a course of action you can take personally, or even administrators can look into this and can say, okay, so this seems to be an exact problem, what can we do for our teachers? And a lot of it, like Jenny mentioned, is individualized. Different teachers would prefer different aspects, working from home or working in class. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And now I'm gonna switch gears to our therapist, and Tamara. I'm actually, oh, sorry, I'm gonna ask Lee Gare. I actually want to get, uh, sorry about that, to
That's
Lee Gare.
okay.
You've been working, you're principal at Montessori, Hyde Park Montessori, and you have the perspective of both administrators and also teachers. So what
Yes.
has it been like for you?
I think, I mean, in March, I mean, I agree most definitely with Jen. I was so impressed to see how many people so quickly came to bat in terms of the knowledge they needed to know. And we allotted 2 weeks time for people to kind of, be able to interact on Zoom and to get those lessons up. And we realized really quickly that the one thing that parents needed, we couldn't provide, and that was in-person care, right? So, I think there was a challenge on the parent end, because parents were frustrated. We were great in March when everybody thought there was only going to be 3 weeks of this, double back to June, and I'm on the phone going, no, I completely agree. I understand how you're feeling. So a lot of balancing, because you want to balance your teachers, because, for us, we shut down and we didn't go back. So we weren't in that, in the pandemic, if you will. It took us months to kind of, okay, we're going back in August. This is what we're going to have to do. So we started to feel all of these things quite later on. Everybody else, it felt like everybody else around us was already in it and telling us, like, don't worry, it'll be fine. Like, once you get in it, you'll feel better. And, and I wasn't buying it. I wasn't buying the words. I needed to be in it. I needed to feel it. And I think, our main concern was making sure that those teachers came back and felt okay doing it, because we knew we didn't have a school team. If, we were useless to children if we were not feeling comfortable ourselves, so lots of conversations, lots and lots of conversations, I hear you. Or like I kept saying, okay, so, if I'm passing you in the hallway and it's, hi, how are you this morning? Oh, I'm all right. Oh, okay. It's not a case, okay, you'll be fine. It was, let's stop and talk about it. We've got 10 minutes. We've sent people home, if they just are off, they're not feeling great. There's some things that we did to help teachers, so we decided we weren't going to have supply teachers come in from the outside, people that we didn't know, or, we redesigned the schedule for the teachers so that some of them could take the TTC, some of them could take transportation when it was less busy and they felt more comfortable. So some people come in earlier than they need to. Some people leave earlier than what we would usually have, but it allows them to feel good about their day from the beginning to the very end. So that was really important. And then to have the kids come back, I think part of the pressure for the teachers was having all the kids come back, having them in this environment, making sure we, had all these rules in place. So, for the first 6 weeks, I said to the teachers, I don't, let's just get everybody settled. I don't care if a piece of material is off the shelf, have conversations, let's go for walks. I implemented a no less than 2 hours outdoor, so, but I realized really quickly that wasn't just for the kids, that was also for the teachers, to get outside and to get some fresh air gives you some perspective.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's been really wonderful because, you have a morning and you can have those minus COVID, you could have a really challenging morning where nothing's going your way as a teacher. The kids go out with the teachers for a walk, they come back and there's kind of a okay, we're going to start again and we're going to keep going. So, lots of focus on the teachers, lots, we've got lots of coffee mornings, just when I think everybody might need a coffee or a cup of tea or something, we get it going because, we're in such tight cohorts that we don't even get to interact the way we did. And we consider ourselves quite close knit. And so that was hard to come back to say, okay, I stay the back and, don't touch your face and, all these rules. But, I think to be able to bring peace of mind, but also to the parents as well. That was pretty, that's been ongoing, conversations on the phone, conversation like monthly, for those who are still feeling really shaky, or, conversations from 2 feet apart at the door, how are you doing? We're doing okay here. We do a daily update for our parents so they know the symptoms and the cold symptoms that are going through the house so that they can feel better about sending their kids. So it's trial and error for sure, because everybody's different. So you don't know what everybody needs unless they say something. I think that was also crucial for us this year, to be able to say, if you need something, yell it out, there's 17 of us here that are willing to help, but we need to know if you need it or not. So I think when you say team effort, it brings it to a different level this year for sure.
For sure. And you being the principal and administrators, I'm sure that's even harder because you have the parents, teachers, and students, and an external team, and you have to balance all of it. And yourself. And how did you make time for yourself and making sure
I haven't yet. I can certainly agree with the idea that it's go. I know at my job, part of it is to make sure that everybody else is doing okay, so I tend to come home at the end of the day, and it's usually about 8 o'clock where I sit and go, whew, okay, and then I recap what my day felt like, what my day looked like. I'm asking for more help, in situations where before it's because it becomes overwhelming. You want to make sure the kids are okay. You want to make sure, the teachers, if a child is exhibiting cold symptoms, it is quite amazing how quickly you do get this sense in your environment that, oh my gosh, this could be a problem, and just to be able to calm those waters. So I don't know if I've taken the time, actually. I do it, I sit, for a little bit, but I'm constantly thinking of different things that we can do to make sure everybody feels okay. Because I think, and like I said before, if we didn't have all these wonderful people, teaching these children, then where would we be? So we have a responsibility. So I think I'm counting down to the Christmas break. That'll be where I take some
for
time.
sure. Yeah, coming up soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's why we even thought it would be a good idea to bring in our emotional well-being team, Bonnie, Tamara, and bring out our administrators, because you're being stretched out everywhere, trying to do all of this and take care of everyone, and you don't really have time. Even if you do want to, you don't have the time to take
It
care of
is,
your own
yeah,
mental health and well-being.
it
Yeah,
is kind of amazing that it's true. Your time is, it's different, you know, because I'm not in a classroom as much as I would love to be, as much as I would generally be based on this. But, and then you think, oh my gosh, I have all this time over here, but it's different in terms of where it's served, for sure.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And now, I'm going to take it over to our emotional health team and Tamara, Bonnie, and you've heard all the concerns our teachers just mentioned. They've been working hard. Just to give a background on, I'd just like you to share with us like how long-lasting stress could affect the health of people and teachers, and how, if they were to continue like this in this environment of high stress and overload, what would that mean, and what would that look like for their own health, and the importance of taking care of yourself. Feel free to jump in, Bonnie or Tamara or Nancy.
Sure, I'll jump in.
Okay.
I've been drinking my tea here, and I quickly noticed the analogy of how quickly, when our stress is at max and where it has nowhere else to go, then it has to overflow. And so when it overflows, the question just becomes, where does it overflow to? Who's being impacted? Is it the students? Is it yourself? Is it your family? Is it your partner? Something's got to give, and something is giving. It's just a matter of what. And so no, it's not sustainable. Anytime, we talk about stress often, and like good stress, bad stress, and it doesn't really matter whether it's good stress or bad stress, it's stress. And when we're at this heightened level for such extended periods of time, our things start to give out. And like I say, it's just a matter of what. So I think we're actually far suppressed, or is that the right words? We've gone far beyond our sustainable. We're not, it's already broken, the sustainability. I think we were back in March, we could have talked about, is this sustainable? But now I believe it's just impacting different areas of our life, different people. And now it's just a matter of what degree is it impacting the people around us.
For sure. Yeah. And, if they were to continue on with this, you could see large amounts of burnout. And, later on, if that burnout is going to affect students directly as well, because they won't have the energy and the time and that energy to be flexible. And like we said, being creative and doing all these things on the spot requires energy and kind of a sense of being, not stressed. So what do you think, Nancy and Tamara? I will give it to you guys. What are your thoughts?
Well, what I heard from the teachers and from Lee, the administrator too, was so much positive, creative, innovative response to their situation. It's really admirable. Like all these three we didn't hear a lot of complaining really for what it is, for what it's actually like. And I think that what I heard about the length of it going on, the uncertainty, the shock of change constantly there. It's like trying to get a footing on shifting sand all the time. I don't think it's sustainable either. Stress is a part of life, and increased stress is a part of life at times. But stress is a physiological problem that needs a physiological solution. And so if we don't have time or space for that, then there's a log jam. It's like what Bonnie was talking about, spilling over, that the log jam happens because the stress cycle can't be completed, either through some kind of movement or real quiet and rest, or through good connections with people. which is, it's really great to see how Lee's so prioritizing connection among her staff as something that helps sustain. But, at some point, I guess it's just the amount of water coming through the system. Can it be processed either with social engagement or a physiological response that's appropriate to the kind of stress? And that physiological response that we have, it depends on each person, each situation. A laundry list of great things to do isn't really good enough, because we need that sensitivity to ourselves. One person's jog is another person's like half hour in the bath with no noise. It's all very varied according to what we need, according to us as individuals and a situation even. That what I'm going to do for my stress changes all the time. So, where's the space to even be sensitive to what do I need right now? If it keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming, you don't have a chance to catch your breath and realize what's needed here. Yeah. So I don't think it's sustainable. I agree, it's not sustainable.
For sure. Tamara?
Hi, guys.
Hi.
So, not to, say exactly everything that Bonnie and Nancy have said, but essentially, I look at it, I don't think the word sustainability is the correct word. I think, echoing what Nancy said around just the way how teachers have been so adaptable, it just shows, their superpower as teachers. Being able to adapt to whatever is kind of thrown their way. And as educators, knowing that they wear so many different hats at so many different times of the day, depending on the needs, and them being able to adapt. So I think as society, I think this shows our level of growth and our ability to adapt to circumstances, even when we don't know what's going to happen. And I think it definitely is testing our ability to incorporate self-care. Everything we thought we knew and how to do, it's been tested and saying, hey, I thought you were great at self-care. And you're like, well, I thought so too, but here we are. Right? Yeah. And so I think it's us learning, us expanding how we self-care. I think that's what it is, because depending on the time of day, the month, what's happening in our life, that particular intervention would work for us, right? But within the same breath, tomorrow it may not work for us. So I think it's us expanding our toolbox in terms of what we can kind of pull on to deal with whatever's coming our way. Because we're going to continue to grow. We as humans, that's one of our superpowers as humans, is being able to grow and adapt, and knowing that, practice makes permanent is kind of my phrase. If once we keep doing it repetitively, we build up that capacity to deal with things. So I don't know if sustainability is something I would say we can totally sustain it, but I think we are definitely handling it in the best way we know how. And I think that's really important to recognize and understand and remember, because I know even for myself, apparently I'm human. And so sometimes I get to a point where I'm just kind of like, my clients are asking me and I'm like, we're looking at each other, and sometimes there's power in us recognizing the limitations to what we can do. And you as, me as a therapist, validating and normalizing that, hey, I feel the same way you do. You're not alone in this, new normal, so to speak, right? So I think it's us, exactly what, the others have said, is just remembering that we don't have all the answers. This is our first pandemic in this lifetime, and we're doing the best with what we have. And it's like, I love a lot of the things that Lee said, because for me, having a supportive, management team is huge. And when your management team doesn't understand what you're going through and how this is impacting you, it compounds things. And it makes things really like you feel like you're on an island by yourself. And so whatever you were feeling, it's much more now, because you're like, oh, I'm the only one doing this. What's wrong with me? Why can't I? I should have. And we go down that negative thought process that really doesn't help us at the end of the day. So I think it's huge, and it's definitely has to be a top-down approach, because if we don't have the resources to execute what it is expected of us, then we're stuck too. So I think it's definitely recognizing that, trying to the best of your ability create spaces for you and maybe your coworkers, your friends and family, where you are able to kind of be together in some capacity. Because, you know, if you within yourself don't feel safe and secure, you can't necessarily create that same space for your kids, as in, you know, the kids that we work with. They're my kids, in case you guys didn't know. So, you know, it's that type of thinking that I always have to remember, like, hey, I can't pour from an empty cup. So what can I do to get myself back to where I need to be so that I can give? And that's also recognizing what your limitations are as an educator. What can I do? What can't I do? And how can I communicate this in a way that others feel like, okay, she or he is trying their best, and what it is can I provide you with so that you can get back to where you should be. But I'm going to stop talking because I'm going to ramble.
Yeah, no.
That's essentially what I wanted to say in short.
No, that was amazing. And three of you have really kind of touched on all the questions that I was going to follow up with.
Oh, sorry.
No. It's perfect. You know, it's great. It really shows, because like you said, everyone is different. Everyone has their own limits, has their own points where they kind of need to stop and focus and make sure, give themselves some time. So it's exactly what three of you have mentioned. And what I was going to ask was, because each of you specialize, Nancy, you specialize, you have mindfulness psychotherapy, Bonnie, you focus more on healing and having that individualized path, the journey to healing someone going from a very stressful situation to finding themselves. And similarly, Tamara, you kind of go into unraveling the emotions of each person and going at the source of it and solving that kind of solve. So what would you say going into the next semester, in general, to administrators and teachers? What can they keep in mind? Because it seems like that survival mode is not really changing very much, seeing from the cases rising up and the lockdown continuing. So what can they do, or how can they frame maybe their thinking, or is it their scheduling? Like what are some things that they can consider in the future? And anyone can jump on.
You know, so if I could hope that the government, parents, the children behave, our administration is awesome and is so supportive as Lee is, and if all of everything was like worked out well, and you had this incredible support system at home, you didn't have your own stressors at home, life was really, really good, and you had a full cup to deal with, those people, I think, they will do okay. It's going to take something from them that they're going to do okay when they have this incredible, awesome support system, and they themselves know how to implement self-care and all that. That's a rare person that has that. I think most of us are dealing with our own challenges and our own limitations about how well we know ourselves. And so it's hard to rely on everything else to work out. It's up to us as individuals to say, I got to own this, and I've got to do what I can to get myself through the other side, so that I'm not a shell of who I was to begin with. And Nancy was touching base on these different self-care, different things that we can do, and very, very succinctly said that we're also different. What's a run for one person is what is a bath for another person. And the challenge is, so we don't typically know even what that is for us. A lot of us don't know what to do that reduces our stress, and we tend to do what other people suggest we do. So I'll turn to Lisa and I go, Lisa, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I listen to music and I sing. And I'm like, all right. And I'm like, shoot, the listening to music, singing thing isn't working for me. Okay, what else do I do? Okay, Jen, okay, so you run a bath. All right. It's like, what if those aren't my thing? And what if I don't know what to do? And I think that's one of the things that we're providing with Enliten is giving people an opportunity to discover what those are for themselves, and to learn, like, what is, I call it our stress relief blueprint. What is it for me based on who I am, based on my personality? What should I do? I don't have 2 years to kind of try it out and hopefully find the right thing. It's I have a very finite amount of time to do this. And so so for each of us to know what our superpowers are. The word superpower was used a lot. I love that. What our superpowers are, what our strengths are. And then we can come home and like just lather ourselves with this, we use the word self-care, but I really think of it as more self-healing, these healing tools. And can I implement them while I'm at school? What is it that I need to do at school that honors me? And finding all these amazing opportunities to bring in healing wherever you can, whether it's 10 seconds here, half an hour here. Where can we find these bits to keep filling ourselves up so that the stress is actually lowered? Yeah,
that's amazing. And I think every teacher administrator needs to have that, because when you go online nowadays and you check social media, it's always the 10 best ways to manage your stress. Go for a walk, and we have all these self-care things, and sometimes it could become another thing to check off the box. It becomes another task or like a chore, and it's hard to integrate it into your own life when you have all these things that you still have to do.
And even to add to that, Sarah, it actually can be another thing that you beat yourself up about or make yourself wrong. Oh, I didn't accomplish this. I didn't do my workout today.
Right.
What's wrong with me? I'm going to be like this forever. And then we just do that cycle of negative talk.
Sure. Yeah. It definitely adds on to another task, and it can spiral down. Yeah, for sure. And any other thoughts from Nancy and Tamara?
Yeah, in a way, we're talking about, we could have this huge laundry list of fantastic things somebody might do for their stress. But if we're not actually digesting it or ingesting it, we're not actually using it. It could be the simplest thing that really lands, but it's a mindfulness of the physiological experience of it that means that we could actually take it in and use it and shift. What we're talking about is wanting a shift in our felt state. So mindfulness of my physical experience, and then kind of with an experimental attitude of, how about this? If we're caring for an upset child, we don't know the thing that's going to land right away. But we have this, first of all, loving attitude toward that upset child. And then we bring this experimental attitude. Well, how about this? How about this? How is this landing? How is this feeling? So there's a kind of relationship with ourselves. I'm talking about developing one of loving kindness, which is part of mindfulness, right? Like observing myself with loving kindness and with this experimental attitude. How does this feel? Oh, that wasn't quite enough, or that wasn't right at all. I don't like the way that feels. I'm going to try this instead. But you see, as I'm talking, there's sort of a sense of time, like an attitude of taking time to sense and feel. And I think that's the real challenge when all the changes are coming at you fast and furious, and you're constantly having to adapt. That's the challenge. Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, and you're definitely, I think you hit right at the point. There is that challenge that you have to go over. And what about Tamara? You focus on emotions, and with your clients you work with, kind of walking them through any situation or any stressful event. So any tips that you can give, or anything that from your practice that people maybe can take on and try and maybe see if that works for them?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of along the same lines of both Bonnie and Nancy. but definitely self-awareness is kind of the key, right? You need to know where your baseline is in order for you to even know how to calm yourself. So then it also asks you to kind of think about learning ways to reflect, right? Sometimes we come in with the understanding that we already know how to reflect, but sometimes it's really taking a step back and creating moments where you can look at how you're feeling. So sometimes I have to break things down because a lot of us use the phrase 0 to 100, right? So the goal is to figure out what's your 20, what's your 40, what's your 60, what's your 80 before you get to 100. And sometimes it's as simple as just stopping, like if you are able to catch when you're going down that rabbit hole, getting them to even go back to, okay, let's breaking things down from literally what was your thought process, this is how you were feeling, and this is how you ended up behaving in such this way. And then creating a pattern, helping them to understand the pattern of how this is all connected, because sometimes, you know, we grew up in situations where we never got that opportunity to learn how to reflect. And a lot of what I do is helping people to figure out what ways they reflect. And so once you get to that point where you're able to reflect, then you can kind of do certain things where you're able to say, hey, something's happening in my body that's telling me what's going on. Because we have more than one ways of figuring out what's going on too, right? Sometimes it manifests in our body, sometimes it's in our thoughts. And so sometimes it's in our behavior. So when we are able to break it down, then that's how kind of where we get to those places where we see, hey, I'm feeling a little bit relaxed, or I'm feeling a little bit different. Maybe the word may not be relaxed, but I'm feeling different. And what does that difference feel like? You know, if you had to give a feeling word. So a lot of the times I'm also helping people to expand their what I call emotional literacy, right? In terms of what that feels, what's that word that you can use aside from the happy, sad, angry. That's kind of what we're used to. That's our default, right? So just kind of helping them to get to certain levels. So that's kind of what I do. So I need to say it in a way that other people can do it. I guess if I'm just saying it in maybe the most simplest form is, if you get a moment, you know, there's things on YouTube that you can Google to, I'm trying to think like what's the easiest way to do these things independently, but essentially online there's a lot of things that you can kind of do that ask yourself these questions, you know, that you can kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, so I'm seeing something here, so maybe if I try exactly what, you know, Nancy said in terms of experimenting, saying, hey, let's try these things, let's see what's working, let's see what's not working, and then being compassionate, saying like, okay, so maybe I need to sit in how I feel. Sometimes we do exactly what Bonnie was saying, like we get mad at ourselves for not doing something or doing too much of something. And I think sometimes there's a lot of power in just sitting and saying, I'm upset, or I'm disappointed, or I'm frustrated, or I feel lost, I feel confused. And that's okay for right now. You know, I think giving yourself that space to be able to do that, but also giving yourself a deadline, like, okay, after, you know, maybe 5 days of feeling this way, what can I do to change it now that I've experienced it in different ways for the past 5 days? What can I now do to change it? You know, is it, you know, doing the singing? Is it the dancing? Is it talking with friends? Is whatever the case may be. So sometimes it's also just being in the presence of other people that you enjoy being around. It doesn't have to be as complicated as we got to figure out what's going on. Sometimes, you know, the presence of others can help. Whether it's on video, I know video is not that great, but video, you know, telephone, if you can, you know, what other people were doing before in terms of, you know, visiting people outside and standing, you know, quite some distance away, all these things help, you know, and also just remembering to focus on what's going well. We get really good at focusing on what's not going well, and we forget about, okay, we still have these things that are going well. So it's really reminding ourselves almost every day, maybe even incorporating affirmations as I speak about them could also help you to remember about some of these things that are going really well. Because I always make the the analogy of like, 10 people can say something, like 9 people can say, you're awesome, you're amazing. And the 10th person can be like, you suck. And you're like, but why do I suck? But you never question any of the 9 folks, right? So we're really, for some reason, as humans, this is what we do. We focus on the negative so well and we forget about what's going well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. No, and you're so right. And I think there might be some things that are already working well that came out from this pandemic, maybe some ideas that you've never thought of before. And, instead of maybe for administrators or even teachers that are looking into the new semester and trying to implement new wellness and well-being plans, maybe kind of taking some ideas of what teachers are already doing. That could be a new approach as well, that they haven't really, instead of restructuring the whole thing. So definitely thank you for that.
No
It
problem.
is so incredible. Sorry, it's so
No,
incredible.
go ahead.
And I find such hope in the new words that I hear, right? Like I hear compassion so many times.
Yeah.
And I hear like in what we do, it's grace and courtesy. And, we're often reverting back to those types of things, the word hope, strength, love, all of these different words that, we have been in our vocabulary, but I hear them so much more. They're so much more powerful now.
Yeah.
And I think that in a time where everything is upside down, there are certain things for everybody that give you compassion, they give you hope, they give you joy, they give you, that's what I look to. I don't even, the social media aspect of it, I don't even get involved. It's for me, I know that's a trigger, that's overwhelming for me. It's too much. But if I can focus on what's close to me and how I can also provide that example, I have 2 boys, so I don't want them, coming out of this thinking that it was, of course it's been, terrible, and there have been things that should not have been happening, but to be able to have the, to set an example for them as, okay, we're gonna get through it, and these are the ways that we're gonna do it. So, cut to me like 3 weeks in doing home parenting, and I was on the floor crying, right? Like, I can't do this. Like, what do we, and I'm in it, and so I realized really quickly that being a teacher and being able to, like, there's no one up, no one's better, no one's ahead in this, and I think that if you continue to remember that everybody is in it, everybody's doing it, but they're doing it differently, then I think that you have more compassion. It automatically comes from you, if you can remember that.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. And everyone is dealing with that same situation. And sometimes it feels like you're alone because we're all restricted to our own physical space. But knowing that everyone's in the same place is definitely a comforting, and it kind of allows you to empathize as well with others. Yeah, definitely right. So before we open it up to questions from our audience, any last thoughts or ideas from all of you, our panelists, that you want to mention?
Back briefly on what Lee just said, things that give me hope. And I think being in 4 different school communities, I've really found a sense of hope in the fact that there's a deeper sense of community that I've witnessed, and I'm sure many others can attest to. It's just this sense that we really have each other's backs, and it comes through in so many small and big ways in our daily interactions, but it's definitely there, and it just, it's taking collaboration to a whole new level. I found, and that gives me,
for sure,
gives me a sense of, like, comfort.
Yeah, for sure. And what about you, Jen? I know the situation's a little different in Montreal, but how do you feel has any of this resonated, or what kind of gives you comfort?
So it gives me comfort. I think that one of the things I've noticed this year, building again on, talking about community, that does give me comfort as well, is this whole idea, like, we put out communication constantly to parents, and I receive as a parent communication about how, we conduct ourselves outside of the school, kind of like, make responsible choices with COVID and everything, so that, we're kind of, we have each other's backs again in that way. So we're building community in a very different way than we're used to. Kind of instilling a sense of, like, responsibility towards the school community to not, put other people at risk unnecessarily.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Definitely agree. I think a lot of teachers can definitely, and everyone can definitely relate to that. Yeah, thank you. And I would just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to all of you for coming today and sharing all of these amazing thoughts and advice and ideas. Now I'm going to open it up to our audience for any questions. Feel free to send it on the chat or unmute your sound so we can hear you ask a question, or Brian will read them out. So we just wait on. Any questions? Feel free to jump on. Let me see in the chat if we have any.
Oh, nothing in the chat right now.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted myself. One question I had was, what practices do you guys think will go beyond COVID? Like, do you guys think that online learning will be more prominent, or do you guys think that in-school person will take over again? Anyone, maybe the administrators could answer that a bit better.
I think, I mean, from my standpoint, I hope not, because the children that we teach at our school are 18 to 30 months and 3-year-olds to 5-year-olds. So you know, our goal is that we would only be doing a online version of who we are for 14 days. And so I would like to think that definitely some of the things that I hope that we take from this is our 2-hour learning experience outside. I think that the way that we are doing arrivals and dismissals, you know, just even in the little ways that we have people coming and going now, it's so much more streamlined, that I think that administratively there are certainly some things that we will definitely keep because they're working, you know, during a time where there's so much uncertainty. So I know it'll work, you know, from an administrative standpoint. You know, we've got this in the bag, if you will. So there's certain things that I know just based on the idea of a new routine that's been really helpful for us. So we'll stick with a few of those things. But certainly for our elementary students at our other schools, you know, there's an advantage even just for conversation, for peer interaction. That's a little different, that I think will expand rather than just sitting, hopefully, rather than just sitting on a video game, you know?
For sure, yeah. Thank you for that. And any other questions?
I had a question about from a policy side for the teachers and educators and administrators. What would help schools in general to, like, we heard so much about kind of how to take care of people. What would help from that school and from that administrative level?
I think that's for everyone on all the panels. Feel free to jump in.
Sure. Well, one thing I've noticed from not only my colleagues, but especially those that are now solely on the online virtual learning space, is that there's an inordinate amount of time spent planning and trying to reinvent the wheel. And it's just not, in terms of sustainability, I don't see that being really something that can be taken forward. You know, if there was some way, lack of resources for those online teachers, because they're not accessing things in the same way that we would in the school environment. So I think there needs to be a much more concerted effort to have ready to go, I mean, if we're talking really practical purposes, ready to go units that could be rolled out and take the stress away from both the teachers, the students who are receiving the curriculum, and the administrators, and the parents, actually, everyone. That's something that I've just wondered out loud many times. Why is that not in place? You know, considering that we've known this has been what we've been dealing with for quite a few months. So yeah, I feel for my online colleagues especially.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just thinking out loud here, and I've always also wondered that is, it's been a while now, and how come, you know, they haven't really used external sources? And I feel like I may be wrong, but there's a need to keep everything internal. And although that may be important safety-wise, if for schools who are already doing online learning, do you see external sources or external help programs or whatever it may be being included in the coming in this new semester? That's for all of you. Anyone can jump in and feel free to.
You know, our children are so young. I think, you know, after we went through what we did from March to June, we polled our parents and we polled our staff, you know, and we said, give us your feedback. Like, what really sucked? Like, what did you hate doing? What did you love doing? You know, because let's focus on the love, right? And I think the one thing that we, you know, putting into perspective what we did and then trying to make it better was to have more parent involvement. So, you know, while we have this focus and we have a plan to be on Zoom, to contact and be interactive with the children, we also have opportunities twice a week this time around, you know, if we need it, that parents can also connect to the teacher, you know, one-on-one as a group forum, you know, how are you feeling? Let's talk about this. And then the second one, more individual, you know, what is your child doing at home? How can we help facilitate the learning? How can we help facilitate, you know, because we found some parents were so willing to do that and almost went overboard. We're saying, whoa, you know, there's a lot of work there. It doesn't all have to be done in a day. We wouldn't do that. So to be able to have those conversations with the parents, not just the children, so that we can connect, so that they can feel, I mean, we're doing it together anyway, right? You know, just because a parent sends a child to school every day doesn't mean their job's done. But I think that to have an interaction like this, where we can, you know, gab and we can stress and we can share, and then we can help each other. I think that that's key, you know, moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
And adding to that whole, the element of self-awareness and checking in and talking about stress and talking about overwhelm, talking about your fears. These weren't conversations we were necessarily having before. We talked about or didn't talk about mental illness, but we're not talking about emotional health.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is having us perhaps speak more freely about emotional health. Hey, I'm not doing so well. Hey, I need help. And so if we can continue that conversation of these amazing check-ins and for those people that don't have that administrative support, or your school environment isn't that way, it's too large, or just different challenges you might have. It's now looking at how can I bring this for myself, because it's crucial for me to get through this in a healthy way. So taking that ownership, I heard the word responsibility at one point, taking on that responsibility as I'm going to figure this out. And you know, we're talking a bit about Googling and finding different things that we could do. It's essential to do these things. And that Nancy says, the experimenting, because we so often Google and we think that was the work. That was the work. I know 10 things, I did it. And, you know, we haven't actually done it. So it is practicing things or you know, and I know that we as Enliten have a program that is specifically designed for teachers to support teachers in being able to understand their stress, have greater self-awareness, and have practical, sustainable, individualized healing actions that will support them. And so it's looking at, you know, that being in that kind of conversation. What can I do to make sure, and as administrators, them being top of mind, how can we support our staff through this emotionally difficult time, unprecedented? And are there teams together that they have looking after the emotional well-being of their staff? One of my fears that I've spoken a few times is I'm actually afraid for January, and not for the same reason other people are necessarily, but I think we're going to have a lot of people that are like, I tap out, I'm not coming back. And I don't know what percentage of teachers need to tap out and say they're done, that we now are talking about sustainability, that our structure crumbles. And I'm certainly not trying to cry wolf or create fear, but it is a concern I have that when we aren't healing through supporting these very stressful times, having the structures in place, that it could be detrimental. And so if we can start getting wrap this up and start doing what we can now, like today, yesterday, like ASAP, to support people even beyond what we've already done.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, definitely agree. And I want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your day to talk about this, because the first step is really talking about it and seeing how everyone's feeling, where everyone is really standing, and then going from there. So for you to come in and share what you've been feeling, and for Bonnie, Nancy, and Tamara to give your opinion from your own expertise is so valuable and helpful. And I think it's that those two areas that need to come together, and they naturally wouldn't. And that's why I think having webinars like this, maybe we'll be able to show people that you need to consider other fields, other point of views, other perspectives to kind of bring together a more cohesive and a plan or a strategy that kind of work for everyone, because everyone is different. So all areas need to be kind of explored. So I want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you all and everyone else who joined us today. Thank you. I also want to remind you guys that the recording will be available after on Enliten YouTube channel. And if anyone wants to contact any of our panelists today, feel free to reach us out at contact@enliten.ca, and we'll definitely reconnect you. With any questions you have, feel free to always send it to us. We're available anytime to answer and stay in touch. So I want to say thank you. If anyone has any questions or any last thoughts, feel free.
Yeah, sorry to ask this very late, but I do have a question.
Yeah.
I hope you can hear me well. Firstly, I just want to say thank you to everyone. I definitely learned a lot from this webinar. It was amazing to hear what all of you had to say. And I did learn a lot about how to approach the new learning and class environment. The normal school curriculum has been implemented with a structure that's mostly suited for in-person learning, right? And I just wanted to say that the shift to quarantine has kind of led to us restructuring the syllabus to be suited for online learning. And with this whole new system, how do you think we can keep the students as engaged as possible? So with the students I teach, they're between the age of 13 to 17. And I think at that age, it's important that they should have the desire to learn, especially since it's online. It's not very easy to, should I say, encourage them, or I don't want to say force, but motivate them personally. So how do you think we can have them engaged as possible?
Oh, that's a good question. Anyone has any thoughts, any ideas?
I think it's difficult to engage children anyway. I mean, we always started some of I did it with the staff when we did our Zoom, tell me what you ate this morning. What's your favorite thing in the world right now? Just, some inspiration. Or on one of our group chats on Zoom, it was, what kind of movies? What are you doing? So I think people appreciate being asked how they are doing. And I don't think it matters if you're 13 or you're 17. I think, particularly now, because people feel so isolated, to have these children share a little bit of maybe about themselves before you get started. It's something that I would try. I'm a talker by nature, so trying to get other people, just to have that sense of a community before you got started would be something I would maybe try. And again, I don't know if it would work.
And it might be it might be good to ask young people what their opinion is about things, to give them an opportunity to be opinionated. That can be engaging.
I was going to say something, but I was waiting for the educators to speak first because I know that's not my area of expertise. But what I would say is trying to tailor the curriculum to relevant things will be very helpful in terms of engagement. So I use the example sometimes because I do work with other teachers. So like for the example of if you're teaching French, right, and you're doing the basic of like eyes, ears, mouth, nose, like that sort of stuff, use a famous person that they know and then go through the eyes, ears, mouth. So it's like, oh, Ariana Grande, I don't know, but like, like I'll pay attention to that as opposed to just like a cutout of certain things. Granted, I know there's also certain things with the curriculum that can be allowed and can't be allowed, but seeing how you can make things relevant to things that they are of interest to can definitely help with the engagement overall. So I definitely encourage teachers to go beyond what they're used to for the in-person and seeing, if possible, to do things that are relevant to them.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Engaging them with what's already happening is they're already talking and in that already. So
at our elementary school, we had the children, and it was an open-ended, project, and it was, how are you feeling right now? One of our children did a COVID rap video. One did, a story about how, he had to stay at home and he was stuck with his sister, and some of these really awesome things, but we would never have seen that if we were in class. We would have seen it on paper. We would have, seen them stand up and explain and share that way. But, I think this is an opportunity for us to try and get these students to look at what's happening a little bit differently and adapt. That's hard to do. And so being able to adapt to the age of 13, and, those are scary. That's scary. But if you can do that and support them some other way, I think, it's a sign of a good teacher, of course, right? To be able to instill a different way of learning in times like this, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a good question. I'm sure all teachers are wondering how to keep that interest and engagement on and on. So thank you for that question. And I think this is going to bring us to an end of our webinar. Thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. Thank you to all our attendees for coming and taking the time. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to end. I hope everyone has a good day. I hope you have a great weekend. Take some time to yourself and have a mental health oriented weekend if possible, if you don't have any other tasks to complete, hopefully. And yeah, I'm gonna have to say have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah.